code versus substantive changes in the code from being able to work with it effectively, interpretation of definitions, or things that are lacking altogether that we have no guideposts on. I see those as two distinct, not saying you can't do both in your mission, but that's a little bit different than what I think we were.
Yeah.
Right, I think we were looking at it a little bit more holistic, at least in my opinion.
Well, and I think, how long is it? You still got a meeting. For the people that already came in, how are you?
Good.
This is once a quarter, the town supervisor gets together with the zoning board of appeals. We have a Q&A, and we're always trying to build a better mousetrap, so to speak. The end goal, if you've been listening to this, we want to make sure that we have the right codes for the community as it is in 2022, so that this board, to tell you the truth, it probably will minimize how many people have to come in here for variances. That'll be one of the end products of it. With that being said, and Jamie, I think to me, when you talk about the buckets, the fence and the setbacks, to me, is a bucket of, this is just a code, these are codes that have been around for 50 or 60 years, and might have been commensurate with the community's makeup back in 1960 and 1970. We need to figure out if that is an appropriate commensurate to 2022. I'm a collaborative person. I want a lot of opinions on this. At the end of the day, and John, I think you would confirm this as an attorney, the town board will have to make the decision via vote of whether these codes are changed, correct? But I have been working with the town board to say that we need to do our due diligence and utilize the talent that we have at our disposal to get that information so we can make good decisions. So the first bucket of what I consider, maybe this is just my finite mind, is that the fences and the setbacks are, these are just a change of the community, and maybe because of the way the makeup has changed and all that, that these need to change. The second bucket, and I think it came out to me very clearly watching the CEA environment, that was a tough situation for this board because of the lack of clarity on certain things. It's because there were things in that code or things not in the code, because the code writer couldn't have had any vision of the things that would be out there in 2021. This is when you talk about the energy and the pigs and all that stuff. I don't blame the code writers. I can't get into their minds. I found that interesting watching those two meetings as you guys were trying to get into the minds of the person that wrote the code in 1968. That's an interesting venture to go into. So to me, those are things where we say, okay, that's not so much the fence. The fence in the sheds, to me, in the setbacks, is more of a tangible, just antiquated code maybe for the way the community is configured. The other bucket, and I'm sure there's a lot of sub-buckets to this, and Jamie, we have to get together, and I really need to understand where you're coming from this, but it's more of, these are things that, well, there is nothing in the code, because when the codes were written, they never would have envisioned certain technologies and certain things that are now prevalent. We need to, I don't even think those are amended codes, those are new codes. Is that a safe rendition of how you're seeing that?
I would say, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm happy to kind of, I just think, come at this with a long-term, a roadmap in mind, not just.
No, I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm not telling you, I'm just saying, let's look at this with a longer play, longer thought.
Yeah, and one other thing I just want to add is that, from my perspective, the number and volume of these types of applications are very time-consuming for Kathy and I. So if we can somehow address the issue and reduce the workload pertaining to these sorts of lower hanging fruit, in my opinion, that frees up more time and
like cluster development where the shed's gotta be 15-foot setback, but the house can be at 5, right? I mean, those things like that, yeah.
And Jamie, you know, you and I, we've known each other a long time, and you can go back to tapes of town board meetings, you can go to the department heads, I know that you, in our meetings, you've heard this, it's probably ad nauseum. We need to look at making decisions not for February 8th, 2022. We are tasked with looking out 20 years in the future. Does this make sense for the foreseeable future? I think you and I are saying the same thing. What is the long game? How did you call it? Right, because it's easy. We got recency bias. Recency bias is a real thing, so let's go and change the law because we just saw this. I'm not into that. I'm into how do we sit there and say, does this make sense today? Or will it make sense in 20 years? And that's hard to do. Some people don't have the ability to even think like that. I'm challenging the talent that work for the town, department heads, and the boards. We need to think like that, because that's when good decisions are made and good codes are drawn and all that. And you don't look back and say, well, how did that decision get made? And I've seen in the last 2 years, not to air dirty laundry to the citizens here, when I go back in the records for 50 years in the town and I see decisions made, well, we're all human beings, and you see that that decision was made kind of as a knee-jerk because something happened the month before that caused pain or whatever, and caused strife and whatever. So a law was made. And now you look at that law with this lens of today, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I want to make sure that the town doesn't run like that. The town is too big now. The town is, we cannot make lazy decisions like that. And I'm really comfortable with the talent that we have on this board, the talent that we have as department heads, that we will get the long game on this. So, you know what? I've overstayed my welcome. You have a meeting with these people. Any last questions before I depart?
Thank you.
Hey, I'll be talking to you guys before the second quarter because we're going to be getting some things going on this, obviously, in the next couple of weeks. Have a great meeting. And based on the roof leakage we had here the last couple of days, it's kind of a minor miracle that we're in here having the meeting, but the roof guys came down and passed some things out for us, so we'll see you again.
See you.
Good time.
What's that?
We're not live, so we can start whenever you want.
Oh, okay. Good evening and welcome to the Webster Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for February 8th, 2022. This evening we have one tabled item on the agenda and 4 scheduled matters. We do have proof of legal publication for each of this evening's matters. We are missing one board member this evening. You do have the right to be heard in front of a full board. You will still be required to receive 3 yes votes in order for your variance to pass. If you would like to table to a future meeting when there will be a full board, you are able to do so. Would you all like to proceed this evening? Well, let me go down. 251 Burnett Road. Would you like to proceed? Is 251 Burnett Road here? Would you like to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. 1251 Woodhull?
Yes, please.
Okay. 1250 Lake Point?
Yes.
Okay. Webster Gulf?
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Okay. And 189 Lake Road?
Yes, please.
Okay. If you could call roll.
Mr. Newtown,
Here.
Mr. Steffenbeck,
Here.
Mrs. Bolo,
Here,
Mr. Hauser,
Here.
Mr. DeMarco,
Here.
Mr. Artuso.
Here. We could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah,
we cry.
we've been practicing. We are professionals.
Okay, anything else? What else? Okay, first off will be the tabled item, 189 Lake Road.
Shall we do it? What's going on?
Yeah. When did we last hear
November, maybe?
Thank you, Ray.
189 Lake Road driveway, located at 189 Lake Road. Applicants Marjorie and Robert Gaskin are requesting an area variance to allow a 0-foot west side setback where 5 feet is required to legalize an existing driveway on a .27 acre parcel having SBL number 063.09-1-52.1 located in a WD waterfront development district under sections 225-10 and 225-22 of the code of the town of Webster.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Marjorie Gaskin, 189 Lake Road.
You would, I think, just to kind of refresh on where we're at with this application. This application was heard, what did we say, in the November
November 9th.
9th. One of the things that was requested, because there was some comment from the previous property owner or landowner to the neighboring property to the west. And we came to the understanding that there was going to be a new owner of that parcel, and that new owner was going to be constructing a new home on that vacant land. That we wanted to understand what, if any, implications resulted from the driveway being on the lot line. And I think we had recently received a letter as of yesterday, I believe it was, or today, from the neighbor, or the new neighbor to the west, who's going to be constructing a new property, or a new home there, and their engineer and or architect, I believe. So we do have a response from them that we will read into the record related to this application. But I also understand that you had developed some speaking points that you had shared with this board earlier today on kind of an update and status of the driveway that is on the lot line. So I think the first step would be to turn it over to you, if you'd like to walk through your letter that you provided to the board. And then what we'll do is reopen this to public comment. And I believe there's a representative from the neighboring parcel that's here this evening to speak to the board as well.
Okay, thank you very much. The points that I wanted to make involve these things. We don't know when the construction is going to begin on that new home, but given the setback variances that were approved for the previous owner, that they were going, the slab of was going to be built on a slab at 251 feet above sea level, and that slab would begin at a distance of 8 feet from our property line. And so our concern is that, number one, there's going to be heavy equipment moving around on that property within 8 feet of our property line, so there is bound to be collateral damage to our driveway as it exists now, and to our lawn for the remainder of the yard. And the other point being that if they're building to an elevation of 251 feet, that is at least 2 feet above where our properties meet. So if there was concern about runoff from our driveway to their property, that does not exist, the fact that their land is going to be higher than ours.
Could I just, I'm kind of confused. This application is for your driveway on the lot line. There's been no proposal or no application to this board for any variances on the parcel to the north. Or I mean to the
We're not
west,
talking about the
sorry,
north.
to the west. Am I missing something?
There were, the previous owner of the property was approved variances to build a home and then
That's
subsequently sold
The
it.
land sold, so.
So no, we have no information on the parcel to the west, other than we know that the land will be elevated before the new home can be constructed. So it'll be elevated above the level of the current neighbors.
Because that is, I think, Mr. House, I think
Because that's what
this,
the DEC said it will be.
Okay. That's what I was missing.
I'm sorry.
the elevations are now dictated by the FEMA requirements. If I'm correct about that.
Okay. Thank you. So do you want to continue?
Yes, I would, thank you. So we're asking at this point, because we don't know what's going to happen, and we do know that the property is going to be higher than ours, and that no matter what the setback variances are finally established, it's going to be close to our property line. And that there is that possibility of collateral damage to our property. So at this point, we're hoping that the town at this time will just take no action against our existing driveway until the construction at 185 is complete, and then we see where we stand at that point. And we're also concerned about the runoff, given that that property is going to be at 251 feet, and our property runs around 249, 248 along the whole length of our lot, that there is going to be runoff onto our property. So we're wondering if the town will be doing anything to ask the new owners to mitigate that problem for us.
So I guess I'm confused. Are you saying you wanted this to remain tabled?
No, not really, no, I'm not asking to remain tabled. I would just like a decision to be made that we'll just wait and see what happens when this is, I don't know if that's the same thing.
Yes.
You're asking for the board to take no action.
So essentially table it for a year or.
I mean, it's your application, right? So you have the option to request that the board vote, to withdraw it, and you can ask, obviously, that it be tabled to vote, the board would need to vote on that. So I just want to make sure that we're clear as to what your request is.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say, and I'm nervous, I apologize. We're in a situation where we don't know what's going to happen. We do know that the property next door is going to be at 251 feet. Maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but our property is lower.
I think it stands to reason that if you don't know what's going to happen next door, well, Josh, are they under, they're not under any type of petition or violation or anything like that, right?
No, there's no current open
So,
violation.
I mean, one way to look at it would be to table it or withdraw it, wait until events unfold next door, and then we're able to make a better decision because we know what's there rather than what might be there.
Well,
Now, that could put you in a better position, could put you in a worse position, I don't know. But the net to the board is we're going to be a hell of a lot more informed at that point.
and that would be fine, except that apparently we're under some sort of code violation and under the threat of imprisonment or
This
fines or
stemmed
something like that if we don't do something about our driveway.
This stemmed from a code violation. That's how this came across the board to begin with.
So there is no current enforcement activity at this time. But yes, it is technically a code violation.
Well, we did get letters from the town.
But nothing's been commenced.
Correct.
So, I mean, I guess in the first instance, as a threshold matter, it's your call as to what you would like us to act upon or not act upon.
But before we do that, I'd really like to open it up to the neighboring parcel, if you don't mind.
No, that's fine. I mean,
I just
she
didn't want
has a
to-
right to, she can preempt it if she wants to, but sure. Is Mr. Kashani here in that?
I think it's the representative from the new property.
Okay.
At this time, we'll open this meeting up to public comment. If you could please state your name and address.
My name is David Walderick. I'm the architect for the adjacent property. And Michael Colicchio asked both myself and his site engineer, Alan Rue, to make a recommendation as to what should happen with respect to the building and site planning of the condition. Meaning that with a 5-foot pavement area next to the property line, it now cuts the buffer which is required from 5 feet to 0. In fact, I understand that the pavement is actually over the property line onto the next property by about 8 inches at the worst point. So he asked for our recommendations, and my recommendation from an architectural standpoint is that the pavement should be removed and the buffer should be reinstated the way it was originally intended by the zoning ordinance. These buffers are there for a reason, and everyone has to share the responsibility of having that open space for aesthetic reasons, but also for heat generation during the summer and snow storage during the winter. So that was my recommendation, and I think Al Rue also had a similar recommendation to Michael. And so Michael is requesting that be removed based on our recommendations.
He made the statement, I can read it out loud. This is from Mr. LaRue, McMahon LaRue, is that I would oppose it based on the 5-foot side setback for the driveway is based on the room needed for snow removal and other driveway maintenance functions, and to create a strip of green space to reduce heat gain next to your structure. Anything else that you would like to add?
No.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak for or against this application? Okay. Seems that there's nobody else. We'll return the discussion back to the board and close out the public comment portion. I believe we did seeker in November. So that is, so bring the discussion back to the board. Further comments, questions? If the applicant could please step back up to the podium.
I do have one question for the board. Previous to the driveway being paved to the lot line, the driveway existed, I believe it was 1.6 feet from the lot line with the original home. So are we considering that the pre-existing condition driveway is no longer permitted, or are we only considering that the extension to the driveway is not permitted? The original driveway when the house burned down was, I think, 1.6 or 1.5 feet off of the lot line.
Right, but the applicant came in to receive new variances for the property for the reconstruction of the home, correct?
Right, but the original permission of the town was that they could build
But that's-
exactly on the setbacks or the foundations as they were when the house no longer existed.
Regard to the structure, but was that language specific to driveways?
I don't know that it was clear that it was just the structure.
If I may, there was during our process to get the variances for the home that we rebuilt after our house was burned down, there was no discussion whatsoever about the driveway. The house to the immediate east of us, that blacktop driveway was, if you look at the map, was very close, within a 0.7, less than a foot away at one point from our driveway. So there was absolutely no indication or no understanding on our part that there was any issue with having a 5-foot setback from the property line for a driveway. Nobody else in that whole area up and down that road has a 5-foot setback for their driveway. So we certainly didn't think, we were not under any impression that we had to follow a code. We're not aware of a code.
So, look, this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The board is going to be asking questions with respect to what is the essence of the application. If the applicant is going to withdraw it or table it, then, I mean, she can make that application. If she's going to ask the board to vote on the application as it exists on the agenda, then obviously you need a discussion. I think you ought to get the determination first.
Do we clarify with Josh first, though? So if she decides to withdraw her application,
We can agree to do that without prejudice, and you come back on another day.
I'm just wondering, is that what we can do?
Sure.
But that's not going to eliminate any proceedings that would come and take a real life.
That's what I was wondering.
Well, I think,
Does it
look,
hold
you know, as a matter of course, I think the town should take the position that, look, you know, for the, until such time, either as new construction begins or a year grace period, look, the board is trying to get this right in light of the circumstances that exist. I don't think a prosecution by the town is going to help matters. So if we're looking to get, you know, orderly development and setbacks, and, you know, this may or may not cause a problem, maybe more clarity after the building is built to the west, why not wait till that point in time? I'm assuming that this driveway is not hurting anything right now. Is that
Other
fair
than
statement?
that, I think we heard the currently is across the lot line.
At the very end, as a, you know, the apron or whatever you call it, when it goes out to the road, that's where, if it crosses the property line, that's where it is.
And then, well, then you know, if the neighbors want to prosecute that case for whatever reason, I suppose, you know, the town can take that up at any point in time.
I just don't see why our situation is different from our neighbors on up and down the road. Nobody has a 5-foot setback. That neighborhood is just not
But
constructed.
ma'am, the board doesn't need to entertain that or answer that unless you want them to rule on the application. And only because of your own comments at the beginning of the presentation, it sounded as though you didn't want to go forward with it, that you essentially wanted it to be tabled until we see what transpires next door.
Well, I guess what I was asking was that the town not take any action against us until we see what happens.
Sounds like the same thing to me.
Well, if the zoning board were to agree with our point of view, that we paved over an existing gravel driveway when we rebuilt our house after it was burnt down in 2012, and we did so without any ill intent, with exactly, as I stated in my
You're
letter.
looking for an advisory opinion, and I don't think the board's going to give you an advisory opinion. So either you want them to decide on the application before the board, or you do not? That would be my recommendation, that be answered.
Well, at some point in time, we need to hear it. But I think at this point in time, we can't ignore it, but we can postpone it. I don't know, can we do it more than a year and say it's until the home is built, or do we postpone it for a year? The time frame, but I mean, until we know what's going on next door, it makes no sense. The end of this over the neighbor's property is probably likely going to be lopped off as soon as the neighbor starts to develop that property anyway. We don't know what the right change is until you know what that plan next door looks like. Or if a change is needed. I can't speak one way or the other. So is it a table? Is it
It's up to the applicant.
and if the applicant tables it, can the board recommend to code enforcement that they stand down until it's revisited by the board?
Let me ask you this, Mr. Waldrop, is there a time frame on this in terms of what's going on next door? Is there a shovel going in the ground?
The application to DEC is being made, or may have been made within the last week by the engineers. So that would probably take several months.
Jeff, what's that running at?
From what we've seen, probably 5 to 6 months.
So that's what I know. That would probably be the best case scenario, like 3 months.
All right, I have another dumb question. Does the application to the DEC, and I don't know anything about what the whole building process is along the lake, but when you make an application to the DEC, do you need the fixed house plan? Or is it just we're going to develop this lot generically?
You need a plan.
Because we haven't seen an updated plan before the zoning board, and I'm assuming that since the setbacks are 15 feet and the lot is 40 feet wide, that there would be some sort of variance request needed, because a 10-foot wide house is not really practical.
Well, so I don't think I was on the board during this period, but it sounds like you guys have already granted variances to this property, which would
They
maintain.
have expired.
There's no meaningful construction. When were they issued?
There was a
Last
2-year,
January?
Okay. All right, so those have expired.
Right.
no. There was a 2-year grace period for this.
Yeah, I did review the determination from that, and it was approved in, I believe, November of 2020, with recommendation to extend an additional year to the DEC.
So we would have to still agree, I think, okay, I see what you're saying, because I know we did that for the house at 183, 181. But they still had to come before the board to get the extension, because we can only extend for a year. So now that has expired, but we would have the opportunity to visit it again.
Yeah, that's my, yeah, when I revisited it, the language was a little bit ambiguous, but it said 1 year with possibility of
With recommendation to
addition.
extend it for 1 more year. So we would still need to see that then. We would need to bring it back to the board to do that extension.
Yes.
Okay.
So this will bring us back to the question, does the applicant want to table this matter? Would you like to request to withdraw your application?
Well, withdraw or table? which
Yeah, or
one?
table, yeah.
Table would postpone it until either the new construction is commenced, so we know what the elevation.
But, yeah, I guess we would request to table it but we'd like to have it made clear that it's tabled until certain events take place.
I just wonder, my recommendation would be table it to a certain date. This way we don't lose track of it. And at that date, we get an update of where the project is.
You'll probably want to table it till September.
As long as we set a certain date.
That would make sense, that would give the DEC time to do their thing, and
I just want to be clear why the applicant can do whatever they want, and it sounds like, nobody's going to pursue this, from the town standpoint until there's resolution on the lot next door, but I mean, either we're in favor of this application or we're not in favor of this application, right? I mean, take the development to the east, to the west away. Is this something that we're even going to consider in 6 months from now, having a driveway on the lot line? We can table it, but I mean, at some point, a decision has to be made on this. I guess the only outlier in this, in my opinion, is, as Ms. Bolo brought up, was there any written agreement with the town with respect to rebuilding in the existing footprint of those houses during that unfortunate incident? And does that also extend to the driveway? If there's no language in that document, if it even exists, which I doubt it does, then, to me, we would at least investigate that. So if this application got tabled, I would suggest that we request it to be tabled to do the investigation on that standpoint, from that standpoint, but we got to decide on this application at some point. And we know what the neighbor to the west does not want it on the lot line. Right?
well, and then that begs the question, am I looking to move it 5 feet? If the driveway were there with the existing house and the house did not get burned down, would we be here asking for the driveway at 1.6 feet to be moved when it's been there for much longer than I've lived in Webster?
Right, and that's a different scenario, and that's why I say if we can find documentation of that.
So, yeah, it was I thought it was a town board resolution, but beyond that, would it have been in January of 2013, or? I don't know.
So first question, how easy is that to redefine?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know
believe
what the files look
It
like.
was a town board resolution. I'm trying to pull it up on the computer.
Oh, okay, thanks, Josh.
And just for point of reference, we did submit an estimate from our contractor that to take the driveway back 2 feet from the property line would cost about $3,750 and replace it with gravel. This is one of those situations where had we known before we put the pavement in, we would have done the right thing.
But the question is, so they still went over the original gravel footprint though, by what and a half? Is that what you said, Fred?
I think so.
Okay.
If that's, because I'm looking at the pre-2012 photograph, and can't really get a dimension off of the GIS photographs, but it was never at 5 feet. And even up to the lot line, it wasn't a grass area for the most part in between, it was just gravel. So it's always been a driving surface, it's just whether or not it was impervious or not. Which mimics all of the other homes along that stretch of the sandbar.
Is that something that's readily available, or should we just table this, Josh, to investigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it may take me a little while.
Yeah, it's already half past. We spent way too long on this application. Like I say, on some applications, the fact that we're discussing this driveway If it were me personally, I would probably just remove it back to the 5 feet, but we'll continue to have the debate over this and see where it goes. I guess I would make a motion to table this application to the next meeting so that we can get a better understanding on the town resolution with respect to driveways related to the incident that occurred back however many years ago. And I think the town will look up the board resolution, and then we'll have that for discussion at the next meeting. The next meeting is February 22nd. All in favor to,
Well, do we want to table it to then, or do we want to table it to wait and see what the next
I-
door property looks like?
we can, I want to vote on this. I don't want this thing, in my opinion, and you guys tell me, but do we really want to sit on this to wait to see what the neighboring property is? Or we have a code, they've got to,
No, I agree. When I said if we're going to table it, there again, if we're going to table it, let's table it to a certain date. Let's table to the 22nd of February and then make a motion.
that'll be my opinion.
So regardless of what the setbacks end up being for next door then?
I'm quite confused on that. I mean, the
Well, I don't know,
setbacks
I don't,
require a variance next door regardless.
you're right.
The
you're right.
variance
That's
was
what
already
require
granted. We
variance.
already know that it was set 7 feet, if I recall from previous discussion. That was granted.
Okay.
The neighbor to the west does not want this at 5 foot. We got public comment, we received that, we understand that. What's going to change?
Sure. It's whether or not it can stay in the existing,
That's the only thing in my
Existing
mind that we would really, would impact our decision would be what this board resolution looks like and what they addressed in terms of driveways in that area. But
Yeah, I'm only interested in finding out what the board resolution was,
okay.
so we can dive into that on our perspective. Let's table it till the next meeting and then make our final decision. I don't feel the need to wait till the next house is built. Because we have to, I think, like what Jamie said, I agree, we have to make a decision. It's one way or the other, so let's see what the board resolution was.
My recommendation is different, but I'm not a voting member. I think that the board, I'm not saying that you cannot get it right at the next meeting, but it seems to me that this driveway is not hurting anything right now. Let the building be built. Maybe ultimately, it's not problematic. I know that the developer is saying that we don't want it, but it seems to me that that's really to be determined. You may be forcing something here to happen that from a functionality standpoint doesn't need to have happen. But if you feel that you need to vote on it, and it's just black and white, and you want to make a call, then adjourn it one week. And if I was the applicant, I'd withdraw the application.
But then what happens if they withdraw?
Nothing. That's the whole point. But I'm in a minority, I'm not a voting, so don't let that,
Well, we'll let the applicant make their decision.
well, that's, I tried to say that a half an hour ago, but
Well,
we gave away the point.
It's hard for an, ordinary citizen to understand what's the difference between, what you're saying. So did I just hear you say if you were the applicant, you would withdraw the application?
That was gratuitous, don't pay any attention to that. I'm just.
No, I'm sure, it's very, first of all, it's very hard to hear what everybody's saying. So if we
I
go
don't
to.
think the town of Webster is gonna prosecute you on this driveway, okay, in the near future. I think ultimately, right, we have to balance between trying to get it right and stay within the code. And my thought on this is simply that if we're not pressed in to do anything right now, because we don't know what's gonna happen next door. Now, they've said they don't want it there, I get that, but it seems somewhat equivocal to me. Let's see what the DEC says, let's see what their building looks like and their footprint work, and maybe the two landowners can work it out between the two of them.
That would be wonderful.
Okay, I don't think there's any pressing need right now. But again, I don't usually do this. This is totally gratuitous. That's the way that I think it should be handled. If the board wants to vote, vote
Can't
away.
deny or to withdraw the application.
So, yeah, I think best course of action would be for us to withdraw our application.
Okay, now understand, that doesn't mean that you may be pressed into action at some future date, but at some future date, you have the right to figure that out.
Exactly. That makes sense. That makes
Okay.
a lot of sense.
So I would recommend that the board's going to grant the applicant's request that it do so without prejudice, and we'll bring it back on another day. That would be my recommendation.
I'll make a motion to accept the applicant's request to withdraw this application.
Without prejudice?
Without prejudice.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
We'll have to have a
We gotta
vote
take a
first.
vote.
Mr. Newtown.
Aye.
Mr. Stafford.
Aye.
Mrs. Bola.
Aye.
and Mr. Hauser.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, first scheduled item this evening is 251 Burnett Road.
251 Burnett Road, cupola. Located at 251 Burnett Road, applicant Stephen Harrington is requesting an area variance to allow a building height of 40 feet where a maximum of 30 feet is permitted associated with the enhancement and reconfiguration of a decorative rooftop cupola on a single-family residence on a 1.69 acre parcel, having SBL number 050.01-1-2.112, located in an R1 single-family residential district under section 225-9 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
Good evening.
Good evening.
If you could please state your name and describe your project.
I'm Steve Harrington. I live at 251 Burnett. And as you just said, we're hoping to do a couple of changes to the cupola on our property, which already sits at 40 feet above the ground, which is above the height limit, so we're going to need a variance. We want to do two things. One is to add a cap or a mini cupola on the top of that cupola in order to get better ventilation. The cupola can serve to ventilate the attic, but ours doesn't work very well. If you, we found out the first year, if you close the windows, you get all the moisture and heat from the house coming up and condensing, and mildew grows all over the place. So if you leave the windows open or cracked with screens, which is what we do now, we get damage from the weather. And one year, a squirrel got in and made an unbelievable mess of things. So what we would like to do is put this little cap, little chimney on top to provide a platform for proper louvered screen ventilation. And also sort of act as a chimney to pull the air up out of that cupola into out of the attic. The second thing we would like to do is put little dormers, decorative dormers, on the middle of each side of the four sides of the roof. And that wouldn't add anything to the height, but it'll break up the roof line and make it look better, in our opinion, because it looks pretty squat at the moment. And so that's what I'm asking for.
And what's the year of the home, sir?
What is the, I'm sorry.
The year?
The year,
Yeah.
1860.
1860. Thank you.
Josh, can you pull the code up on that?
It's in that full resolution. Any comments or questions?
Are you, question for you, are you on the state or county historical register with the home?
No, we are not. And I checked into that. We are an old house, but we are not a historically significant house.
Do you want to take the opportunity away from yourself or a future buyer to register the home That's another question, because this change will stop that.
I have no problem with that.
Well, I believe there have been significant additions to the home since you purchased it. Did you
There
purchase
have
it
been.
originally from Taskers?
We put, I was here 2 years ago to put the porch on the front
Right,
for us.
right. 'Cause we actually looked at this house well before you made it beautiful. But there have been additions to it already that would already take from the historical original footprint.
Any other comments or questions? This meeting is open to anyone wishing to speak for or against this application. Seeing no one, will return the discussion back to the board. Pursuant to NYCRR Section 617 of the Environmental Code, I'll make a motion for type 2 secret.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any further comments, questions? No. You would care to walk through a couple of findings of fact?
All right, the request is not out of character with the neighborhood. It's the only house like this in that neighborhood. The next one, I think, is way down Lake Road. Will not create a detriment to nearby properties. The house has been in existence since 1860. It's a couple of feet additional to the height. I did not realize from the road that the house is actually 40 feet. It's deceiving because it's 2 stories with an attic, but it's not, in my mind, it was not nearly that tall.
They're tall stories.
Yeah, the benefit is not achieved by any other method. Cupolas do need some type of ventilation, and in driving by the property, it's obvious that this one it needs to have something done to it in order to help preserve the ventilation of the roof and of the cupola itself. The request is not substantial. I don't believe that driving by 2 years from now, you'll know that it was not an original feature of the house because the cupola has been there forever. It will just enhance the look of it. No adverse physical or environmental impacts to the site or to the neighborhood. Difficulty, I would say, is not self-created in that the cupola has been there for many, many years with the home. And it does need to have some sort of a ventilation feature besides just leaving it open to the elements. It's not an undesirable change. I don't think this request is significant. Anything I have missed?
The home is pretty shielded from all the other homes in the neighborhood between the trees and the new development on the opposite side of the road. I guess that would be the west.
Right, the house is,
The house is on your facing.
and the houses on either side of it are set back from the road significantly, so it's not right in line with them where it would be overshadowing their home at all.
You don't care to make a motion?
Yeah, I think on my notes. But I would make a motion to grant an area variance for a cupola addition at 251 Burnett Road. Applicant Stephen Harrington is requesting an area variance to allow a building height of 40 feet where a maximum of 30 feet is permitted, associated with the enhancement and reconfiguration of a decorative rooftop cupola of a single-family residence on a .19 acre parcel having SBL number 050.01-1-2-112, located in an R1 single-family residential district.
Second.
Mrs. Bola?
Aye.
Mr. Newtown?
Aye.
Mr. Hauser?
Aye.
Mr. Stafford?
Aye.
Okay, your variance has been granted. A couple conditions apply. Must obtain all necessary governmental permits, including a town building permit, and 1 year meaningful construction is set to expire 1 year from this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is 1251 Woodhull Road.
1251 Woodhull Road driveway, located at 1251 Woodhull Road. Applicant Leonard Chapman II is requesting an area variance to allow a 6-inch setback where 5 feet is required, associated with a driveway expansion leading to an attached side load garage addition to a single-family residence on a 2.46 acre parcel having SBL number 050.03-1-35.1, located in an R1 single-family residential district under section 225-9 of the code of the town of Webster.
Len Chapman, 1251 Woodhull Road. The project I'm proposing, you have an elevation photo in your packet from Carini, the architect. What my wife and I would like to do is to gable in a side-load garage to the existing garage. And with that, we're asking that an ideal apron for that garage would be 20 feet. At this point, we would have 5 feet with the 5-foot setbacks. This driveway apron would be 159.9 feet from Woodhull Road. There are pine trees, crabapple tree, and a maple tree that also help shield it, plus the distance. Sagebrook, which is the neighboring area behind us, it would be about 335 feet, but I also have a ravine and many trees, obviously, that block that view on my property as well. The only person that's really affected is at 1245 Woodhull to the west, owned by Andrew Colvin, who, as you can see in your documents, has signed off. He and I have had discussions. The alternative to this would be going 15 feet deep into my property, southward toward Sagebrook, in order to be able to create enough turning radius, if you will, to get vehicles into the garage properly without destroying the tires, or more importantly, probably the driveway itself, with trying to make too tight of a turn. Aesthetically, Andrew Colvin and I have agreed that, this variance would aesthetically for both properties be the proper way to do this.
And it would only be for a length of 31 feet?
Yeah, the length, yeah, so that's
Finish
the
length
width of the garage,
addition?
yes. Yeah,
That's for a side-loaded garage, right?
correct.
Have you just thought of putting the entrance to the garage in the rear?
There will be no, on the rear, if you're looking at the elevation photo, those will be the only 2 garage doors on the side below. No garage doors or any type of doors actually on the rear part of the property.
No, I understand. Have you thought of putting,
Well, if we did that, there'd actually be more asphalt. So in discussing with Andrew, so if I did it in the rear, I have to bring asphalt all the way to the back and put an apron back there 20 feet, which would mean I'm going 20 feet past that property there, or past the building piece there. So there'd be more asphalt than less if I did that.
yeah, but you possibly would not need a variance?
I understand that. So we're looking for aesthetics. In 2018, we built this, redeveloped this house, if you will. And so aesthetically, this is, I think, our best option for both us and our neighbors.
Is 20 feet enough of an apron to actually turn into a side-load garage?
It is.
What's the normal width of a street?
Okay. I visually can't.
This meeting is open to anyone,
Okay.
This meeting is open to anyone wishing to speak for or against this application. Seeing no one, we'll return the discussion back to the board. Pursuant to NYCRR Section 617 of the Environmental Code, I'll make a motion for type 2 secret.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. it's a shame that on a lot, it is as large as this one, that the house was biased so far to the west. For this very situation, because it forces the driveway to be up against the lot line, even for the turnaround, not just even for this.
That happened in 2000 when Andrew Colvin's father, who owned my house, split it. You can see in the back.
Right.
I mean, we're right back in the same situation as we were 10 minutes ago.
Except that I have the neighbor's signature.
The only problem is neighbors change.
True.
So as you said, you did consider putting the doors on the back side of this proposed garage addition.
It was talked about, but not considered, because I don't think aesthetically it'd be pleasing, because then our backyard to the ravine would be pretty much asphalt. So from his back deck, you'd be looking at more asphalt. Currently, if he were approved for the variance, from his deck, he will not have to look at the asphalt via trees and where it's positioned. And if I have to go, if I don't get the variance, I have to go 15 feet back from the current 8 or 15, he's still looking at asphalt. So we're trying to mitigate the amount of asphalt that he is looking at, and when I'm in my backyard also that I'm looking at. There's only 2 residences that would be affected. And as you can see through the maps, the GSI, as in the last person, many of the driveways are on, over, or well within the 5-foot setbacks already. So it's not uncommon on this street to have such an occurrence. And there would be no drainage issues, there's no trees being cut down, no other plants being removed as well. Both properties drain to the south, which, as I said, we have about a 30-foot ravine with a stream in the rear of the property.
So your garage addition actually would be in line with Mr. Colvin's house?
Correct.
Okay.
If you look at the GSI code, you can kind of see where things are. So from his back deck there at 1245, he would not have any visual of that asphalt area. But if I had to go 15 feet, or as you're saying, put the garage doors in the rear, there would certainly be a visual of that. And the asphalt, which I didn't put in there, Andrew Coleman and myself measured out, from his house to the property line, it's just shy of 31 feet, 30 feet, 7 inches, I believe.
Did you consider any other location? Obviously, this is attached to the existing 2-car. What about a pole barn that may not have required variances? What other considerations did you make besides the discussion around having the doors on the back side of the attached?
Well, I could just go 15 feet deeper into my property with no variance on asphalt to be able to try and make the proper turns to get in.
Right, I just wondered if you considered something else, like a pole barn where you would front enter off.
No, because I want to run electric and gas, and so obviously that would prohibit, because then I'm going to have to, it's going to cost exponentially more if I build a barn to have, a new driveway put in, completely new driveway, to have gas run, to have electric run, etc.
And what would the minimum be for a turnaround?
The minimum, there really isn't, talking with builders and then talking with friends of mine who have a similar situation, this is for classic cars, so they're very long. And so 20 feet is, really the ideal situation. To be able to make, a nice proper K-turn to either back it in or pull it and then back out after some.
Anyone
Further questions, comments, thoughts?
I'm just kind of thinking what you're thinking.
How do you know it? You want to really know it?
You are really going.
Could you limit the variance request, and I understand there's for classic cars, but we also have to balance this with obviously the 5-foot setback. To get it to a 2-foot setback, so that would be a 1.2 foot or 18.8 or 18 and 3/4 feet, basically. Rough numbers.
So the apron could come out 18.8, so 18 feet.
So with a
8 inches.
2-foot setback instead of 8 inches as you're proposing. Try to find some balance between what's allowed, which is 5 foot, and what you're proposing, which is less than 1.
I do understand that, and I appreciate that. I have a friend who has a similar situation, and his is already existing since the 1980s on 250. He has the same car I do, and he has 18 feet. And this is why I came to the variance, because I've seen the damage to his asphalt and to the tires on his car, and it's to the point where in the summer times he usually just leaves his car sit in the driveway because it's such a hassle to get the cars in and out. And, you know, if we're gonna do this project, which is extensive and, you know, I think beautifies the home, I really don't want to put something out there that's not going to be, you know, usable, if you will.
How often do you pull a car in their drives and take it out?
April to November, assuming, you know, there's.
How often? 3 times a week, 4 times a week, every day?
It's at least a few times a week. I go to car shows every week, and then, you know, my wife and I love to go take drives and so forth. It's my big hobby.
You couldn't put that car in the other garage?
No, because in the winter time, that's where they will slumber, and my wife wants to get her car in and out.
Can you take the garage addition and shift it, like to offset it to the east, which would give you more side room on the west
I
side?
cannot because of the house situation. We have living space on the other side, our living room.
Right, but it's not connected, is there?
Yeah, everything's connected, yeah,
Well-
connected garage.
No, I see the garage is connected, but it looked like there was a patio or open area. If you offset it a foot or two.
Yeah, but then that'll block our view to the woods as well.
Oh, so you want
our
everything,
family room.
that's what you're telling us?
What's that?
You want everything, that's what you're telling us?
No, I just want to make it
I
aesthetically
think,
pleasing, which I think, you know,
I
we've done,
understand.
and we've revamped the entire house and so
Right.
forth, and so I want to make it, you know, that's why I went to my neighbors, had them sign off, and the neighbor who will be affected, we sat, we talked about it, we measured things, we looked at it from the perspective of his, what he considers his most valuable asset is, you know, his deck. We looked at it from a drainage standpoint, which everything flows to the south, so there's no drainage issues, we're not taking out any trees, you know, so, and he was okay. He actually put his phone number on his approval, if there's any questions. He unfortunately couldn't be here tonight to comment.
Well, and you could make the apron concrete, and then it's not impacted by the heat in the summer and the tires. And there's a,
I guess
instead of being asphalt, the apron itself could be concrete.
at 20 feet, you mean?
Well, I think the board is looking for a 2-foot side setback.
We're looking for some balance here. Obviously, you saw through the last application that we have to continue to address in the future. We only have one other driveway variance that was approved within at least, well, in the past year and a half, but prior to my tenure on this board, never, I don't think. Very few, less than 3, I'm going to say, in 15 years.
Yeah.
And we're just looking for some balance here between what's required at 5 foot and what you're asking for at 0.8. So I think the board's willing to consider something here. You just got to work with us. It's significant. If you look at the standards, we can go through the standards as is today. It's self-created, it's significant. 5 foot's required, you're asking for 0.8. You know, if we were to go through those standards, you don't meet the standards, so.
Yeah, I understand, that's why I went through the process. Could we go for like 1.5 foot? Negotiate, I know an extra 6 inches doesn't seem like a lot, but in regards to the turning radius and stuff, that will be significant in trying to save the asphalt, save the tires, and make it a less of a hassle essentially.
I mean, I would personally, in my opinion, I'd say I want the 2 feet. The fact that this is gonna come back to us with an uncooperative neighbor, and it's gonna be thrown back in our face with the, you let this person, you let that person.
It sets a precedent.
Yeah, I don't wanna set the precedent, that's why.
Well, it's been set on Woodhull Drive. I know they're older homes, but
Yeah.
there's, as you see in the photographs, there's, all the homes around me have issues. They're on or
Let's
over.
back up in your statement. It's been set because maybe that's how they were constructed. This
I
board
understand.
has not granted variances for driveways.
I understand. The only visual impact is from my house and the current neighbor, and I understand that it could change over time.
My opinion is the applicant put some panicking down, he's concerned about getting the tires to make it. 2 feet is extremely generous in Lawrence Park.
Well, if that's all you're gonna offer, I guess I would take that as opposed to having to go 15 feet behind my property, because I don't think it's exactly gonna look pleasant for me, plus it's gonna cost obviously more to asphalt that area.
Right, I think we're looking to accommodate what you're trying to achieve here, which is
I
a side
appreciate
load
that.
garage. Obviously, you've narrowed down that option because it makes the most sense. I agree, putting more impervious surface off to the rear and extending and putting a loop back to come in doesn't make sense. I agree, if you put a pole barn up, you're still gonna have to have a significant amount of asphalt to get back there. So you've got more impervious surface if you go that route. There's no other location on this property that you would attach the garage. If you were to go to the off to the side and put in an addition, you'd still require a variance on that side. Meaning if you continued with like a 4-car garage facing Woodhull Road, correct, we still have variance issues on that side we'd have to contend with. I think this just provides a nice balance, it gives you what you want. It's we're trying to find that medium ground because we don't want to set precedent for these types of situations.
Yeah, I can understand. I would accept that though.
We did seeker and we did.
Did we do secret?
Yes.
Yes. And public comment. So we're down to, the standards or any findings that this board has. So are you willing to amend your application to a 2-foot side setback, where 5 feet is required versus a 0.8-foot side setback where
I am.
5 feet is required?
I am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so with the amended application, I think we just touched on a handful of findings, right? There's the balance between trying to accommodate what this gentleman would like to do with his classic car, or cars, whatever you have. Looked at other options. 2-car garage off to the side doesn't seem to make sense, it would still require variances. Additional asphalt into the backyard doesn't seem to make sense in order to accommodate what we would call probably a rear load garage addition. Same would go for a pole barn structure. He has worked with his neighbor, and his neighbor was in agreement even at the 0.8 foot, but we were trying to find more balance here. The applicant was willing to amend the application to 2 foot so that he could achieve what he's desiring in terms of this garage addition. No adverse environmental impacts. I don't think this certainly won't create any detriment to stormwater runoff or any drainage issues. There's plenty of green space throughout the rest of the property and between the neighboring property and where he has his structures. This was self-created, obviously, but I think that's about all I have. Anybody have anything else?
We would limit the length of the 2-foot setback to the length of the garage. Just
2 foot for the length is 30 foot.
right, so that we wouldn't permit it to be the length of the whole driveway, I guess is what I'm trying to.
Correct, it's just gonna be the apron.
So condition will be that that 2-foot side setback will be for the length of the apron for the new garage addition only.
Correct.
Okay. I'll make the motion to
That's
grant.
31 feet.
So 31 feet.
Correct.
Okay, and we'll put that on the record. I'll make a motion to grant an area variance at 1251 Woodhull Road for the applicant Leonard Chaplet.
Correct.
Who's requesting an area variance to allow a 2-foot side setback where 5 foot is required associated with a driveway expansion of 31 feet in length, leading to an attached side load garage addition to a single-family residence on a 2.46 acre parcel having SBL number 050.03-1-35.1, located in R1 single-family residential district under section 225-9 of the code of the town of Webster.
Second.
Mr. Newtown.
Aye.
Mrs. Bola.
Aye.
Mr. Hauser. Mr. Stafford.
Aye. Okay, you've got your variance, couple conditions apply, must obtain all necessary governmental permits, including a town building permit, and 1-year meaningful construction is set to expire 1 year from this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate your flexibility. That brings us to 1250 Lake Point Drive, pool and deck.
Lake Point Drive, pool and deck, located at 1250 Lake Point Drive. Applicant Ryan Lord is requesting area variances to allow a 62-foot front east setback where 75 feet is required, and a 12-foot rear setback where 15 feet is required, associated with the construction of an above-ground swimming pool and attached deck on a .63 acre corner parcel having SBL number 050.01-1-77, located in an R1 single-family residential zoning district under section 225-9 and 225-47 of the code of the town of Webster.
Good evening.
Good evening. Brian Lord, 1250 Lake Point Drive. The project in itself is just a standard above-ground pool, 15 by 30, on the northeast sector of the property. Given that it's a corner property, corner lot, and having a lot of variances to contend with, this is the best location that I could find for this pool in reference to my back patio and view from the back of the house where the kids would be able to be seen from the house. Referencing the certain variances, really just a 3-foot variance to the adjacent property line, and then the 62-foot from 250 there. So I believe you have it here 75 feet, so it would be 13 feet from that. I was originally quoted a 65-foot, so possibly a 3-foot variance to the east side of the property. Something standard as far as the deck's concerned is going to probably go with a horseshoe about a quarter of the way down on each side, and it would then lead down into the patio, so it's a seamless look to it. Yeah, nothing will really be dug, nothing's going to be really destroyed around the property at all. Just a very standard above-ground pool.
What's the width of the pad?
The pad,
3 feet?
the deck you're saying?
Yeah.
The deck, I believe we're looking at about 5
Hang on.
feet.
The width of the radius there? The radius of the deck?
Does my
The
father
depth of the
interrupt the
deck.
AutoCAD of it?
Yep.
The width of the deck? off of the
6
pool.
feet,
6'8",
6 feet even.
6 feet even. Okay, so
Where the pool itself would actually be 17 feet off of the north lot line.
right. I'm just saying. My point being is 6 feet is not excessive for a deck at the end to be able to access the pool. So it's not like he's asking for a 14-foot deck that's causing the 12-foot side setback. It's 6 foot.
No, pretty standard deck where it just where you can get in and out from the side of the pool. And then most of the deck will be facing the patio itself, which is towards the house.
Makes sense.
And then, once again, just for clarification, the 62-foot off the Webster Road side, you can't move it, you didn't want to move it back behind the house for what reason?
Well, I originally had it drew up, that we have a patio that comes right off the back deck, so we couldn't have it too close. And with that amount of space I have in my backyard, it's not conducive to put a pool there. There's also shrubbery between the property line and the neighbor. So when we put it over on behind the house there, to have a gradient of steps that's pertinent to your code, we had to push it back to that point, so that way it's a nice slope gradient down into the patio.
Yep. Obviously, you couldn't put it behind the patio because you would have required variances there. You couldn't have put it on the west side of your backyard because you would have required variances there. No matter where you put this, you would have required variances.
Yes.
The pool is not excessive in size. As I stated before, a 6-foot deck around just the horseshoe on the one end to the west is not significant. At most, maybe you could get a foot or two if you were to push back to the west with the pool, but 1 to 2 feet when you got 60-foot side setback, or 70 feet required is really insignificant in my opinion.
Now, you could reorient the location of the pool so it would run more north and south because you would not be able to see your children playing in the pool?
If I did that, I'd have to rearrange that whole deck, and it would make for a much different and much more significant deck, where I was trying to keep it more conglomerate with the patio itself, so you can go straight from the patio to the pool and not trek through grass and try to get up and I don't know if you want to pool, but get a bunch of grass floating around in the pool. Now you got to change your filters, clean your filters constantly.
You're saying put it on the oriented so that it's north-south and it's by the chimney?
Right. All I'm doing is making sure to be covered other options as far as the application is concerned.
And I have no windows on that side of my house. It's all just blocked off with the fireplace and stuff. So if I did do that, it would be hard to see if we wanted to come inside. I have a 6- and a 4-year-old. That 4-year-old's still learning how to swim, so I'd like to keep an eye on it at all times.
Understood. Okay. Any other comments? This meeting is open to anyone wishing to speak for or against this application. Seeing no one, will return the discussion back to the board. Pursuant to NYCRR Section 617 of the Environmental Code, I'll make a motion for type 2 seeker.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think we've exhausted any possibilities of relocating this or trying to modify or adjust your plan to reduce the variance request, and it just doesn't seem feasible. As Mr. Hauser pointed out, if you were to orient it along the Webster Road side, you lose visibility of the pool from your backyard. It's now oriented primarily in the backyard, or side yard rather. There's no logical location in the backyard because of the existing deck area, and you would require a variance there if you pushed it to the far west. It wouldn't fit in that footprint either. So I think what you've done in terms of the orientation makes the most sense. I don't see any adverse environmental impacts. This was self-created, but I think he's minimized it. It's really just to the deck on the side setback to the north, and then obviously to the pool edge on the Webster Road side for the 75-foot setback. Any further?
No. I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to grant an area variance located at 1250 Lake Point Drive. Applicant Ryan Lord is requesting area variances to allow a 62-foot front east setback where 75 feet is required and a 12-foot rear setback where 15 feet is required, associated with the construction of an above-ground swimming pool and attached deck on a .63-acre corner parcel having SBL number 050.01-1-77, located in an R1 single-family residential zoning district under sections 225-9 and 225-47 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
Second.
Mr. Stafford?
Aye.
Mrs. Bola?
Aye.
Mr. Hauser?
Aye.
Mr. Newtown?
Aye. Okay, you've got your variance for the pool and the deck. A couple of conditions apply. Must obtain all necessary governmental permits, including a town building permit, and 1 year immediate before construction is set to expire 1 year from the season.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Webster Golf Club.
Webster Golf Club Simulator Building Addition, located at 440 Salt Road. Applicant David Walder is requesting to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use/structure associated with the construction of a 4,000 square foot golf simulator addition to the clubhouse building at Webster Golf Club on a 58.48 acre parcel having SBL number 05004-1-7.11, located in an LL large lot residential zoning district under section 225-97 and 225-100 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
Good evening. Hello, my name is David Walder. I'm the architect for this project. And we're looking to build a simulator building about 4,000 square feet. And it's attached to an existing non-conforming structure. We are not looking for any kind of variances, area variances at this time.
This already went through the, what stages of planning is this one?
We've been approved for the sketch plan.
So where it's proposed, the entrance will be through the pro shop area and the snack bar? You'll walk right through there to get to the simulator?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Where you're proposing this, I believe that's kind of the snack bar area or the pro shop. You walk through there to an entrance, or?
I don't think there's a snack bar at that point.
There's the high tab tables.
Yes. There's a door there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there's the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be the only point of entrance to the simulator area. It's attached to the building, correct? Okay.
How many parking spaces you have those?
That's a point.
Well,
They'll be parking in the front,
I know there's parking in the front.
but that's where they would park, because they'll come in the
No,
same,
my question was, how many are you going to lose?
oh, well, we're not losing any, because that's in employee parking.
I know what employee parking's X number of spaces.
Oh, it's where we wash the carts. We'll probably lose, I don't know, five spaces maybe of employee parking.
by the way, this is Debbie Murphy. She's the owner of the golf course.
So in this case, what we're being asked of is to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use/structure.
I think this site received a use variance years ago, back in the early 60s or if not 50s. Memory serves me correctly, at least that was not permitted use variance. It's a residential district. It's probably an extension of it, and I think it's a good use of an extension. And simulators is, you know, well, the club will float during the wintertime. Clubs are establishing leagues. And if it keeps the business going, that's, in my opinion, that's helpful.
It'll give all you hackers a place to go.
That's right.
So that, I guess, that would be one of my questions, would the intent be to keep like the bar and grill open disability.
Were there any comments from the planning, Faith?
Nothing of substance, there weren't any major concerns, they were pretty supportive of the plan.
I don't have anything else to add. Seems like a logical location. It's, as noted here, it's 200-foot setback to the front of the building. There's obviously the two-story frame house in the front that pre-existing, and then there's kind of the shrub garden area that shields all of this, and majority of the clubhouse itself is closer to Salt Road than this is. It's a logical location for it. You couldn't go off to the north because you'd be on the tee box for the golf course. If you were to put it over by the driving range area, you would lose accessibility of the probably the restroom facilities and the restaurant area, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
This meeting is open to anyone wishing to speak for or against this application. Seeing no one, we'll return the discussion back to the board. I believe this would be on
It's all it's a use.
It's a what? It's a use.
Well, it's an expansion of the original use variance.
The application is requesting to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use structure.
This would be unlisted.
So unlisted action is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So pursuant to seeker, I make a motion for this as an unlisted action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then in terms of a motion, findings of fact, I think we touched on a few in terms of the location. It makes sense in the proposed location to have access to the existing restaurant, bar area, and the restroom facilities. It's set back further than the existing structure is. It's shielded from Salt Road based on the two-story house and the shrubbery around the garden area, the gazebo.
Is this gonna be open during the summertime as well, that component?
Yes, be open year round.
So the parking's sufficient even when golf is going full tilt in the summertime? Is that a yes?
Yes.
Anybody have anything else to add? No? It is self-created, but it is pre-existing condition for the entire course, as Mr. Houghton pointed out. There was a use variance provided several years ago. They can capture everything. Last call. Anyone?
So is that significant enough for findings then? I'm assuming.
Anything else?
Yeah, it's not changing the use, it's
Okay.
just extending the period of time of use throughout the year.
Well, for good, then I'll make the motion. Okay.
I would maybe we want to adopt the, because they did complete the use variance hardship portion of this, that we adopt those findings. So it's an extension of the pre-existing non-conforming use.
I don't believe it's pre-existing and conforming. It's conforming based on a variance that was granted in the
So it's
50s or 60s.
So an extension of previously granted use?
That's correct.
Okay.
just want to make sure we work this.
Yeah, but that's what 22597 speaks to, extension of a non-conforming use. Right.
So with,
Yeah,
with,
motion.
what's that?
I think we're there for the motion.
I think you do it both.
Turn that Spain on.
Yeah, it's an expansion.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we adopted these, the statement of unnecessary hardship for the use variance that was in the application. We adopt those findings in the application, or in the record. So we're just going to make a motion based on how it's said here.
Sure.
Anyone care to make a motion?
Are you going to finish, Mr. Stefan?
Well, do you want me to change the language then?
No, just as it is.
Just what?
As it is written.
Okay. I'll make a motion then to grant expansion of a pre-existing, well, actually, how do we want to call this then? We're granting just the expansion. So I'll just say, I'll make a motion to grant an expansion for the Webster Golf Club Simulator Building Addition located at 440 Salt Road. Applicant David Waldrich is requesting to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use structure associated with the construction of a 4,000 square foot golf simulator addition to the clubhouse building at the Webster Golf Course on a 58.48 acre parcel having SBL number 050.04-1-70.11 located in a large lot residential zoning district under sections 225-97 and 225-100 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
I just want to, so there's two components, right? The 97 is an extension of the use to now allow the simulators. And section 100 allows the structural alteration of the building to house the simulators. So that's the motion. Perfect.
Second?
Mr. Stefan?
Aye.
Mr. Newtown?
Aye.
Mrs. Bola?
Aye.
Mr. Hauser?
Aye.
Okay, you've got your variance for the golf simulator.
Thank you.
Yes, the standard conditions would still apply when you're in construction and set to expire 1 year from this evening, and obviously the remainder of the planning board approvals and all necessary governmental and health approvals.
Do we
Okay.
want to
Okay, thank you.
include the architect plan with the approval just to notice the location? Or is that
Yeah,
okay for-
no, that's fine. We had it in the package. We can reference it for sure. We talked about this.
So it's over.
Yes, it's done.
Awesome. So,
You've been a great addition.
Thanks, Andy, love working with you.
So, sorry, we gotta just close out the meeting. We are just gonna reference I wish I could read. It's a drawing dated 12/13/21 or 12/12. That shows the proposed location prepared by David Waldrich. There is a, Waldrich, sorry. I can't read what the drawing number is. There is no drawing number, but it's Webster Golf Course, Debbie Murphy. It looks like it's T1 and then 7. So we'll put that on file because it does show the proposed location. Okay, that concludes this evening's meeting. Thank you for watching. Well, you didn't watch because it wasn't live. Maybe you'll watch it.
Let's watch it on video. It's a slow night. It's going to start till late. All right, I have minutes from the January 26th meeting, no, I'm sorry, the January 11th meeting for approval. I would make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, thank you.
Is everybody in favor? Yes. Ooh.
You came in all laughing. I'm like, this is gonna be a fun night, and you're all serious on us. I'm like, what's going on?
I can kick them out.
Yeah, you should
We
have.
better keep you on the phone.
Right.